Is this thing on?
Testing. Man, I'm like barely showing up on it. Oh, hey now. That's much better.
Good Lord. Mr. Producer Man over there.
Is that where you want it? Like a little bit above, a little bit below?
That's what she said.
You're listening to Slightly Uncomfortable. Are you ready?
All right, so we'll start off by saying what we are drinking this evening. And I'm going to let Root go on and start with his analysis on what it is we're drinking, and I'll give my 2 cents.
This is the first time that I have tried this particular bourbon. James here has been singing its hosannas for quite a while. So I showed up over here this evening, bourbonless, and
As normal.
hey, I've brought you plenty of swill.
Yeah, that's right.
But so he offered me up this here fine bottle of Johnny Drum. This is amazing. It got a little bit of a fruity kind of pop on the nose. First touch of the tongue, you certainly know you're drinking something, but it doesn't run you away. And the flavor in this thing,
It's over the top.
oh my God.
I mean, the complaints I've heard about it from, clearly idiots. But the complaints I've heard about it is that it's a fruit bomb, that it's just really fruity. And I don't really get that much fruit out of it. I get really full flavor. I get a lot of heat up front at first, and then after a while it kind of lays into the back of your throat and just stays there.
Yeah.
And it has a long residual burn.
Yeah, but
It's
not a harsh burn.
It's not unpleasant at all. No.
Right. And I can almost understand where they get the fruity from. It's not so much fruity as that caramel. So
yeah, I would. The caramel and the toffee are very prevalent in this.
Yeah,
I would absolutely agree.
I think for the untrained palate, that sweetness might come off as fruity, but you can't just pour it in your mouth and swill it right quick. You got to let it sit there for a minute.
This is a patient man's bourbon.
It is.
Root is drinking his neat, and mine is on the rocks with a large bourbon cube. And I'll be honest with you, there is no bad way to drink this.
No.
Other than not to drink it at all.
And that would be bad.
Yeah, and it's from Willett Distillery. No age statement, but my research tells me it's 10 to 12 years old. Used to be 15. Still not a lot of people know about it, but it's under a $30 bottle of bourbon, and it's one of the best bourbons I've ever had.
Absolutely. And I would probably drive a good distance to get a taste of that 15.
It's yeah. They're not bottling it anymore because they were having a hard time keeping it with the popularity going up, hanging on to it for 15 years.
Oh yeah.
They'd rather bottle it to 10 to 12. And now that being said, it is a Willett product. And they're not overly disclosing when they change things.
Right.
So it could go down to 8 years, and they don't tell anybody. But for my money, I'm going to keep drinking it until it stops tasting good.
This does not have the taste of a young bourbon.
No. No, but honestly, in my mind, there are 3 bourbons under $30 that are 10 years or older. And that's the Henry McKenna 10-year-old, which you would absolutely love that one. That's a strong rye. Bourbon of the year.
Can't go wrong with that.
I think it was last year
With the rye.
from Heaven Hill. And then you got the Eagle Rare 10-year-old. That can be found under $30. And then you got this one. And of the 3 of those, I still say Johnny Drum's the best. And we're also, later on in the show, we're going to be tackling some Knob Creek rye.
Oh, I'm looking forward to that.
Which that's where Root likes to play. I'm not a rye drinker. Alex is not with us tonight. Normally, he still hasn't spoken at this point of the show. But
so it's kind of hard to tell. That
it's hard to know when he's here or not. But he is under the weather. He's got a sinus infection. And it may just be because he's somewhat of a pussy.
Could be.
Because Root and I play hurt.
Yeah,
We just do. We lace him up
That's right.
We toe the line.
All out there
And
for
we
the
show
team.
it up.
110% on the field.
110%. Special salutations are going out to Alex tonight, and hope that he starts feeling better. He may have just had a date.
That's probably likely.
I don't know. I mean, I'm not going to doubt him, but I'm kind of doubting him.
He's a fine-looking man. He can find women.
That's between you and your Lord. Not that there's anything wrong with that. So our topic on this evening is going to be a very broad subject, and I really wish that Alex could have been here with us because
he does it so well.
Because he needs to hear it, honestly. Right. Now, honestly, he really does communicate well. He just does it in a far different manner than Root and I.
Yes. He chooses his words very carefully, unlike us.
It makes me feel weird anytime I say the phrase Root and I. I mean, it just
sounds like a disease.
It does. Like I Root and I,
Radio edit.
We're going to talk about tonight, our topic is going to be communication. And arguably, I don't know where our podcast is going to end up weaving in and out of on topics. But I would say there are a few topics that are going to be more impactful to day-to-day human's life than that of communication.
Probably not our particular discussion on it, but
true.
But
yeah, we're not going to overstate our value to society. I mean, if you're not good at communicating, no matter what else you have strengths in, you're going to struggle your whole life.
Absolutely.
I have seen, and Root and I have both seen, professional people that have all sorts of academic credentials that cannot maintain a working relationship or a professional or even a personal relationship worth a damn. And even though they are so ultra intelligent and educated, they cannot figure out a way to actually communicate with people that is a way that they can process and that they can enjoy speaking with somebody. The few times they try, they think they're doing good, and they're just tearing people down, and it's just just horrible. So as we're going to do with most of our topics, we're going to start off with just background on what we bring to the table or what our past has taught us about whatever topic we're talking about. So we will dive into this one and talk about what kind of communication we saw as young people. How were we taught before leaving the house on how to communicate?
Well, Root, because Root tends to speak to himself in the third person often.
That's a whole lot of third person going in down here.
I was single child.
Yeah, that just means Root didn't date, evidently, as a child. I mean, I call myself an only child, but Root,
I was a single child.
He's a single child.
Yes.
They wouldn't accept his Tinder profile.
You'll probably hear about that later.
Jesus Christ.
But yeah, so I grew up as an only child, middle lower class. Mom and dad busted their ass to try and give me a life somewhat different than theirs. Both of my folks were from the mountains. My mother, by way of the Sandy River, so she's from northeastern Kentucky. My dad's from southeastern Kentucky.
Radio edit.
Growing up in Castle Root, under the reign of Root Sr.,
I thought that was some Game of Thrones reference. In Castle Root.
The communication was in its pretty raw form, and I don't mean that in a crude way. Words were exchanged with very little. I don't want to make my folks out sound like assholes because they were not, but there was very little time when we're sharing ideas to worry about each other's feelings.
You know, I don't know that that's necessarily a bad thing. I think we're far too sensitive to other people's feelings now, and it gets in the way of honest and effective communication.
Yep. And going back to, my parents were not assholes. They loved me dearly, and they still do, thank God. But when my feelings got hurt because I was being corrected, maybe more from an emotional standpoint than a parental standpoint, everybody gets there at some point. They were quick to back away and focus more on the correction than their emotional outburst. And they were kind enough to explain that to me. And so how I got from that to the asshole I am now is
not their
life's
fault.
hard knocks.
It's not their fault.
It's not.
It's not Root's parents' fault.
No, it's a genetic deformity.
He's just an angry man.
But yeah, and growing up lower middle class, I was as much a part of the family income as they were. Although, prior to getting a job myself, I had my list of chores. Those chores included hoeing the garden and working in Dad's shop and changing oil in his trucks because he was a truck driver and mechanic and a variety of other things. My mother was a nurse, and in my preteen years, she worked the midnight ER shift in a small little hamlet in Kentucky called Lexington. And so, yeah. Communication, I never really knew what it meant until I started studying music.
Well, let's just face it. At our age, we didn't have the definitions for minutia the way that society does now. Whether we were good, bad, or indifferent at something, we didn't have to always label every damn thing you do throughout a day.
Amen.
Our fathers were not people that wrote in journals. No. Our mothers did not have diaries.
No. Or YouTube blogs.
Right. They were not reading self-help books.
Well, let's not go too far.
I mean, the closest thing that my folks ever did for self-help was go to church.
Yeah.
That was the closest thing. And if somebody didn't like it, suck it up, Buttercup. Either get on board or get out of the way. One of the two. This is how it's going to be. And I think people were much more self-assured back there. Again, good, bad, or indifferent.
Well, I think they had to be. I mean, again, lower middle class. If you didn't believe in you, who the fuck was going to believe in you?
Well, and it sounds like that we both come from very similar backgrounds, in that our parents were hustlers.
Oh yeah.
In that, not one job. There's a lot of people that are fortunate enough to have a parent that has one job that can put them in a lifestyle, in an economic level that they don't really have to worry about things.
Yeah.
But even as much as, I'm assuming Root's family is the same as mine, even as much as they hustled, there was still paycheck to paycheck.
Yeah. I distinctly remember me in the living room, mom and dad. I was in the living room or in the bedroom. It was a very small house. Mom and dad sitting at the kitchen table, studying over the bills, and seriously contemplating bankruptcy.
Yeah. Or just what one weren't going to get paid right now.
Right. Well, maybe we don't put gas in the car this week, and I can drive you to work in the truck.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think, again, my background is very similar to Root's, is that my dad worked, at one time he was working 3 jobs as a child. When I was a child.
When he was a child?
Well,
That's
I'm not putting it past him.
I wouldn't either.
I will tell you what, he retired from his last position at the age of 84 years old. And that was the 3rd company that he draws retirement from. And so he didn't know any other way. World War II vet, didn't know the word, the meaning of the word not work. He didn't know what to do. He worked 7 days a week, multiple jobs. My mom was a homemaker. And he thought it was so important for my mother to be a homemaker that he did work 3 jobs. And when my mom was a homemaker, she made the home. She didn't have her feet up on the coffee table, watching stories on TV. We always said that she dusted so much that she caught the dust before it ever hit the surface.
Sounds like my mother-in-law.
Just unbelievable. But as far as communication goes, when I was a kid, I thought my dad was a big asshole because he was a man of very few words. And when
From the sound of it, he didn't have time.
Right. And now, as an adult, I realized he was tired. He was butt-ass tired. I work 2 jobs now. And it's not anything to the degree that my father did.
Right.
Because each one of his jobs, he worked with his hands and his back and his arms. I work with my mind and my fingers.
Well, your fingers.
Yeah, that's and honestly, I'm just really good at bullshitting. But so the communication was very minimal. I would come home and pour my heart out to my mother And then by the time Daddy got home, if I were going to do the same thing to him, he just didn't have time for it.
Right.
So very minimal, and it turned me into somewhat of a mama's boy. And I'm not ashamed of that at all.
You shouldn't
My
be.
mom was stronger than most men I've ever met. And but I mean, the communication was. Now that being said, I did get in arguments. I too was a single child, trying to make her feel better. I had an older sister that was 18 years older than me, and we never lived together, so I felt as though I was an only child. But my mom and I would go at it. I mean, she had a very fiery temper, and so did I. And we would just go, tooth and nail at one another. But I never once disrespected her. Well, I did one time, and I have blanked memories about what happened thereafter.
I got a story on that too.
Yeah, I mean, so I was taught that you can say what you want to say, but you best not cross over that level, that line of respect, because as soon as you do, you're going to be picking your ass up.
Yep.
And I think that's another thing that we have lost in today's society is the ability to be responsible parents and also just knock the fire out of one of the kids when they step out of line.
Yeah, I was.
And have that threat hanging over the head.
Yep. I'm sure James felt the sting of Dad's belt. And
I didn't.
Oh, really?
My dad believed in belt whipping until my mama came around.
Oh.
She said, our son's got one spot to be hit at, and we've got one thing to be used on it. That's our hand on his ass. She said, you'll never take your belt off that boy.
And he said, yes, ma'am.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Hey.
But sadly, my dad has the hand the size of an ape. No joke, he wears a size 16 ring or dead.
Wow.
Yeah. So
That's a 3/4 inch pipe.
Thank you. So it was like he was hitting me with 5 little hammers. So please continue.
Well, we up until now we were talking about as small boys what communication was like in the household, and I want to push this forward a little bit. I got into the adolescent years and probably rebelling a little bit because Mom and Dad was never around, and at least that's how I felt at the time. Looking back on it, as we tend to do when we hit our age, I know better.
There ain't a whole lot ahead of us, so we might as well look back.
Amen. Especially the way we're living. So,
Want another bourbon?
yeah, hit me.
Here.
I'm kind of talking here, so.
Oh, I'm sorry. Evidently, you thought I was your bartender.
Fine.
Let's go ahead and correct that thought.
I'll just drink it right out of the damn bottle. 100 proof rye whiskey. I am not above it.
Yeah. Better go make up that spare bed.
So anyway,
That man cannot talk and pour at the same
I
time.
can't.
I don't know that he's from Kentucky.
pouring bourbon is a religious experiment.
Amen.
So, I hit the ripe old age of 14, 15 years old. All kinds of things going on with young boys at about that age. And
Sprouting pubes.
oh yeah, feeling all kinds of things. Most of them mine. So I was wild-eyed and just flat out stupid. And I was 14. 14, I had spent the night behind the old Kentucky Theater with a bunch of folks. And we had a great time. I come dragging my ass in, Saturday morning, 8 o'clock, Mom and Dad losing their mind. Dad had called the police. Of course, back then, the police didn't go down that part of Lexington.
That is true. And also, back then, it was not unusual for 14-year-olds to be out at night.
True.
Oh, my God, if that happened today.
Oh, yeah.
And, I mean, I have children. There's no way in the world I would let them out this house after dark.
Right. Well, and Mom and Dad were the same way. But I'm a crafty little bastard.
He is crafty. He's not little. He's not little.
I'm not little, but I can still be pretty sneaky if I have to. So, Buddy and I had snuck out and went down there and had our fun. And I come dragging my sorry butt back about 8 the next morning. And Mom lights into me, as she should. She's scared to death. Dad, he saw me walking up the street and went ahead and called off the police because they had already, and rightfully so.
And also, he's going, he's mine. Bring me the boy.
So Mom's just all up in my face, yelling and screaming and all kinds of stuff. And I pushed her away.
I'm sorry, I was mid-drink.
Yeah. And my father saw that And he marches right up in front of me and had to push Mom back because she would have killed me. And Dad says, if you want to push something, push this.
Oh, no.
So I did.
How are you here today?
Man broke my nose and 3 of my ribs that day.
And I think, and this is veering a bit off the topic, but I think it's absolutely important to see how far we've came. Now, granted, for every one of those stories that we just told, there were times that kids were abused and beat within an inch of their life.
Absolutely.
And now that doesn't happen near as much as it did then. So is the means, is the ends worth, justifying the
well, and
what gets lost in society? I mean, honestly, I think we get a whole lot of more weak-minded and it's. I think it's easier when your first few scars come from somebody that loves you than from somebody you don't even know.
Yeah, and at that point, I had been involved with competitive martial arts, so I could handle myself, and at least I thought. Clearly, I couldn't. At least not against a very irritated father and husband.
That's old man strength.
That is.
And he's fending his bride.
Yeah, exactly. And he was, he's all kinds of torn up about it. He can't talk about it today without tearing up.
Yeah.
And
it's absolutely valid that when a parent says this hurts me more than it does you.
Yeah. Well, and
especially since he lost control, but at that same time he saw his bride get pushed, and he was still scared because you had been out all night being an asshole. So he had all sorts of emotions building up.
He did.
And he also had a boy that was standing toe to toe with him for the first time and wanted to make damn sure that was the last time.
And it was.
Yep.
And it was. And there are 3 people directly responsible. 3 people that walk this earth that have saved my life. He was the first. Then Angela. And
She still does.
And she still does daily.
Yes.
And
Thank you, Angela.
Yes. And then her father, who passed a couple of weeks ago. Those 3 people. And, there may be more people to come. I don't know.
There will be.
There damn well better be, because I need it.
The only reason it's not been more than that, he just doesn't hang out with that many different people.
That's true.
He really minimizes the fray there when he does it. So I think what we can really sum up in our childhood is that communication was very direct, very matter of fact, and when they said it, they meant it.
Yes.
So I think that has a whole lot to do with who we are as adults, because one of the things that drew Root and I together when we first met each other is that we pretty much speak our mind. We do so in a professional manner most of the time.
Usually.
But there's so very few people that we're surrounded with that actually do that.
Yeah.
That you can actually trust when they say what they say, that they mean it. And when we saw that, we gravitated toward one another. And sadly, there are just very few people out in today's society that operate that way.
Correct. A lot of people that say they do.
Oh, it's easy to say it.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. It's something else to tell somebody who's bullshitting you. I think you're bullshitting me.
Right.
And be firm in that position, and force them to explain themselves.
And it takes time, because you see what they say, and then you couple that with what you see.
Yeah.
You hear them, then it takes time to actually see them and come up with an average on, all right, this is what they say, this is what they do, and
Yeah.
so I think that's a natural segue into going into communication today. Now, this was not something that was on the show notes, but this was something that happened this evening. And if this podcast is going to be anything, it's going to be what we're thinking.
Sure.
And I was riding in the car with my 3 children.
I'm a little afraid.
You should be. This is no joke. We were playing something that I played a car game when I was a kid. It was called the letter game. And we would choose a letter, and we took turns and went around the car. And each person came up with a word that started with that letter. Very innocent, very, I wouldn't say it's overly fun.
Educational for small
But
kids.
especially when you have kids the age of mine.
Yeah.
And I'm continually amazed at their vocabulary at their age.
Because James teaches them horrendous words.
I do. But we're going around, and I pick out the letter F.
Okay.
And I am sitting there. My son is to my right in the passenger side. Then my daughter and my other daughter, I have twins, are sitting next to one another in the back seat. So we're kind of going around clockwise. And several rounds went, maybe 3 or 4 rounds, and my one daughter says, Faith. And I'm like, oh, that is so sweet. I said, and I actually complimented. I said, darling, that is just, that's awesome that you thought of that. And she comes back around, she goes, I don't mean to say this in vain. Fuck.
James almost wrecked the car.
I laughed my ass off. Because at the end of the day, I am James.
Damn right.
You know, I'm dad, and I am divorced, so it makes it for difficult. You know, if I were still with their mom, I would be saying that word a whole lot more often. But if I was still with their mom, it could be more of a cohesive. I just made Root have
Raw whiskey in the nose sucks.
100 proof rye whiskey come up the wrong way. But we could be in a united front on this, you know. But now I have to be much more cautious. It was adorable.
Yeah.
Now I will be honest. She's never heard me say that word. I have slipped up and said a few profane words in front of my kids, but not very many at all.
Right.
And if I do, it's damn or hell or something like that. The biblical ones, you know.
Right.
So we got into a conversation after that, and I looked at her. I'm like, darling, and she's ultra competitive. So she had that in the back of her head, and she's like, I am not losing. I've got this one saved up. And as soon as she felt she was getting pushed in the corner, fuck, which is often what I do, you know. But I had a conversation with her about words, and the kids and I have had this conversation a couple times. I want to hear Ruth's input on this. It fascinates me in society, the words that are not appropriate to say.
Oh, here comes George Carlin.
Right. Well, and then the words that are acceptable.
Yeah.
All right, let's just use the word fuck, which honestly is one of the best words in my mind in the English language. It can be a noun, it can be a pronoun, it can be an adverb, it can be a verb.
It can be a comma.
Yeah, it's very versatile.
Very.
So, but that's still not socially acceptable in professional settings or social settings unless you're wanting to try to really, really set yourself apart from the fold, and not necessarily in a positive way. But yet the word freak is okay. It's the same number of letters. Well, no, it's one extra one.
Math is hard.
Math?
English is hard.
All right, let's just say damn. Darn. Damn
Dang.
is not acceptable, even though it's in the Bible. Darn is. Shoot and shit. So here as a society, we have carved out these 7 dirty words, as far as George Carlin would say.
I knew he had to get there.
Right? But instead of saying the words that we want to say, the words that will exemplify exactly what we're thinking, we've chosen to pick out 7 other words that many times rhyme with the word we can't say, right? It is amazing as a society that we feel as though that one is bad, one is acceptable. A preacher will say shoot in a sermon, but there will be an elders and deacons meeting if he says shit. Well, I don't know about today's churches. They're crazy now. Yeah. But what's your thoughts on that, about profane communication?
Well, I'm processing.
I love when he stutters.
Yes, he does. Yeah. So,
Well, not that way. Sounded a little weird the way he said it.
he
Have
knows
another
he
sip
loves
of
me.
rye whiskey.
Nah, I need to get this thought out right quick. There's a time and a place for everything, and profane language. I took a music class, a series of music classes, back in late high school, early college, and one of my most beloved instructors ever, Miss Stansberry. Never knew her first name. She said the use of profane language, and hell, now that I think about it, I've heard it elsewhere. The use of profane language is the sign of a weak vocabulary.
My grandfather said when I was 7 years old, he says, profanity is the weapon of an ignorant mind.
Yeah, yeah,
And I've never forgotten that.
yeah, yeah. And what Miss Stansberry said is, if you have to use profane language, it is very clear to her, to me, she would say, that you've never read a Shakespearean comedy.
That would be accurate for me.
Shakespeare had a way of writing insults that were hysterical and without even using the profane language of his day.
Well, it's cheap. It was cheap then, it's cheap now.
Yeah, yeah. But in excited moments, you know, I talked to you, I mentioned the falling out my dad and I had back in the day. I pushed him, first words out of his mouth is, you damn little shit. And off we went, you know. So in excited moments, the purposeful use of that kind of language
Has value.
has value. And those excited moments happen in all aspects of our life. You know, relationships, we have our spats, and we say things we don't mean. Sometimes we say things and we do mean it. And we use this kind of language. Business settings, professional settings, discussions about policy or what is just the right thing to do, whether it's high-level policy or do we want to buy this or not.
Right.
Even those kinds of conversations can get heated. And ask around the office, brother.
Oh, I know.
I've let a few F-bombs go in these kinds of conversations to make the point.
Yeah, and I think, and I understand the value of profane language, because trust me, I utilize those as well.
Oh, yeah.
But I like to have fun with it. We're talking about the word fuck. It can really set the moment. And one thing
Sometimes
about that,
it's a moment unto itself.
that's right. And one thing about that word is it gets everybody's attention in the room. All right? And sometimes if you want to grab attention, that's what you do. But my bigger issue with this communication thing is, why is one word acceptable and one word isn't? Is it not just, it is almost laughable that as a society, and it would be interesting, I'm not a linguist.
Obviously.
I don't even do good with American. But it would be interesting to see if other languages did the same thing, if they had profane words, but instead of using those words because they know they're not acceptable, they've come up with profane light words. And I was talking to my kids this evening, and I'm like, you know what? And I did not repeat the word that my daughter said, although it was one of the funniest things, and it was amazingly adorable. And I told her, I'm like, you're not in trouble, don't worry, you know, I understand, but you can't be saying that. But I told them, I said, you know, we talked about the word damn and shit and hell, and especially damn and hell, because they go to church pretty regularly. And I'm like, well, if it's a cuss word, why is it in the Bible? You know, is ass a cuss word only when you're calling someone that, or is it okay if you're calling an animal that?
Can we go down that road for a minute?
Yeah. Ass always gets his attention.
Yes.
And we share that in common, too.
I am an ass man. I got to give you that. I firmly believe, and I came to faith very, well, not late in life, but I wasn't raised as a Christian. I was raised somewhat in the church on the big days. But in high school and college, I spent 10 years as a initiated Gardnerian witch.
Yeah, that's going to be an interesting podcast we got coming up.
And I've dabbled in all kinds of crazy shit. And then I'll give you the rest of the story later. Sometime around 98, I came to faith. And one thing that one of my mentors at the time said, who was much like us, was...
Cool dude.
He
Radio edit.
We're name dropping now. Root won't use his own name, but by God, he'll drop everybody else's.
we might have to put a radio edit over that one. But anyway, one thing that these guys really drove into me as this little baby Christian was our actions and words that we use have intent behind them.
Absolutely.
So if I'm cutting up with James or whoever may be listening to this, and you say a funny or you throw a little jab at me, and I'm like, oh, shit, there's no intent there.
Right.
It's a throwaway. But if James and I are having an argument, and I reach across the table, point my finger in his face, and I was like, God damn you, that has intent behind it.
Right.
so it's all about intent. And so I agree with you. You know, this mix and match word thing is nonsense.
It's silly.
It's silly. It's bullshit.
I mean, and you think when people do it, I know I used to play basketball in church leagues, and there is no worse example for sportsmanship than church league basketball.
Don't forget softball. Softball's bad,
Any
too.
church league sport.
Right.
But it's so silly to see grown men out there going, well, shoot fire. I'll be Durham. Well, shucks. It's idiotic.
I bet not one of them said, duck you.
Yeah, no. But then all of a sudden somebody come out with, shit. Oh, everybody drops in their prayer circle. You think they just crucified somebody out in left field.
Miss Sally stands up in the back, praised it.
Oh, Lordy be. But I'm just amazed by it. But what I talked to my kids about, too, was, all right, shit, damn, hell, all of those, you know. The words that hurt more, they don't hurt anybody. Now, if you tell somebody, damn you, that probably bothered folks decades ago. I don't know if that's very impactful to people's lives now, as a whole. But if I look at somebody and call them stupid, that's hurtful. There is no way of saying that in a way that is not hurtful.
Yeah,
Or shut up.
Yeah.
If you won't get on the south side of me, you tell me to shut up. Because as soon as I realize that I can't be heard in this moment, I'm going to make damn sure everybody hears me.
Yeah.
You know, shut up and stupid are two words I will never, ever permit in my home.
I have very few words that, well, no, I can't say that. I have a pretty extensive list of words that I personally don't use. Stupid's one of them. Yeah. Now, I slip up on that, you know, like I say, cutting up.
Oh,
you know.
But if you're with your boys, if you're with people that give you a wiggle room,
yeah,
that you have grace, because there's already a predetermined relationship there that
right.
you understand.
Right.
And you're just playing the dozens.
Yeah.
But there are still certain things, and we're talking about communication, there's still certain things within that dynamic.
Yep.
If you're talking about, and I'm not even referring to your relationship,
right.
But if you're talking about a male-female relationship, there are still things that as a man, a good man, you know you don't say.
Correct.
No matter what the time.
Correct.
You just don't. There is no way, even said in jest, and you can have a multiple-decade relationship that's going to go well for anyone. And it shouldn't.
Right.
It really shouldn't. But
we talked earlier about personal responsibility. I can't remember if that was a previous conversation or today, but everything for Ruth comes back around
to third person.
To third person and personal responsibility and a couple other key principles. And respect is another one of those things. I don't care who I meet on the street.
He does never go on the street.
Well, that's true.
He goes to Kroger. He goes home.
No, there's a liquor store.
At Kroger.
There's another liquor store. There's several. But I don't care who I run into. It is on me to be respectful to those people until they give me a reason not to be. And so, you know, I don't care if I meet somebody and their wife grates on my nerves, or I meet somebody and their husband grates on my nerves. If I value the relationship I have with the one that I like, it doesn't serve anyone for me to disrespect their partner.
Right.
Period.
It doesn't serve us doesn't do anyone any good to disrespect anyone anytime.
True.
And as soon as I disrespect somebody, that relationship just changed for me.
Yeah.
And my goal in disrespecting them is to make damn sure it changes for them too.
Yep.
We're redefining this now.
Create separation.
And I think that brings us into our next part of this is let's talk about effective communication.
God damn it.
In the same way that we do ineffective communication. You know, what words or technique in and of itself can be effective, and what words or techniques in and of itself can be not effective or anti-communicative. I think that's the one thing that I want to talk about the most is when you say things But the result of it is anti-communication. By what you're saying, you're actually shutting down the channels of communication. And people do it all the time.
My biggest pet peeve, and it just makes me mad just thinking about it. Having a discussion with someone, making plans, maybe it's a little light argument, you know, a friendly kind
Some
of debate.
emotional.
Yeah, no, it doesn't even have to be that. I loathe when people say, well, Root, don't you think that X, Y, and Z? No, damn it. If I thought X, Y, and Z, I would have fucking said it. Come on.
So, all right, we're going to go back and forth, and that'll be your first one. Is don't you think?
No, I don't.
I would agree. I would agree with that. Now, this is the one that will get under my skin, and it happens so much in professional settings and in meetings, and especially in trainings. When they went through this long diatribe, and they look out there into the audience or whoever their subjects are, and they understand that they've just glazed over. Because 9 times out of 10, the damn speaker is so damn boring that they can't keep anybody's attention. And they say, well, basically.
2.5 hours later, well, basically.
And I have said this in meetings. I would raise my hand. I'm like, thank you for finally dumbing it down so us mouth-breathing and knuckle-draggers can understand your high level of intellect. And then in my mind, I'm going, you asshole. I don't need you breaking your shit down. If I wanted to understand it, I could. This is dumb. You're dumb. And I don't like you. Basically. Basically, sir, you're an asshole.
Yep. Yeah. Okay. So I guess it's in my court now.
Yeah. And sadly, it's gotten to where now it's a verbal tick.
Yeah.
That when people are not comfortable in a speaking situation, when they are a loss or whether they are concerned whether they actually got their point across, they will say basically and then try to repeat the shit we didn't pay attention to the first time.
Sometimes word for frickin' word.
Yeah.
Basically.
Basically, sir, I'm leaving the room. I don't want to earhole you, so I'm out.
I think he may have deserved an earholing, though.
Yes, absolutely. Your turn.
You know?
I know, right?
You know? Mm-hmm. Sports figures, because their expertise is doing the basketball, doing the football, doing the baseball, doing the
you could not sound less athletic.
Whatever.
By calling it the basketball and the football, playing with the balls.
That's what she said.
I'm just going to let that one go.
Could not have said.
God, it just drives. I have watched professional football players have an entire interview and say nothing but,
And I think part of that, to their defense, is I don't want to generalize, but I think when you're talking about professional football and even basketball players, I remember back in the day, one of the best quotes I'd heard was by Moses Malone, who was the center for the Philadelphia 76ers.
And later the Rockets, wasn't he?
Yes. Yeah. He was part of the Twin Towers, and I loved him. He was mean. He was ornery.
He was a beast.
He was. And he was only like 6'9",
yeah.
but he was as wide as he was tall.
He was a big boy.
And they actually asked him, he had gotten like 23 rebounds in a game, which was not unusual for Moses. Plus, the man's name is Moses. It doesn't get much cooler than a man being named Moses.
Nothing like seeing Moses Malone going down the paint and hearing the broadcaster say he's parting the paint.
He's parting the defense like the Red Sea. But they asked him, Moses. And to give background, I'm not generalizing, to give background, he was a high school student that was one of the first players ever to go into the NBA directly out of high school. Moses was not an articulate, nor did he appear to be an educated man. And this reporter tried their best to ask this very articulate, very well-worded, almost pretentious question about Moses Malone's philosophy in rebounding the basketball in a no-zone defended situation. And he actually said, I just figure can't score if you ain't got the ball. and he walked away.
Good on him.
Yeah.
Good on him.
So I don't want to over-criticize, because now in today's, like on the UK basketball team, these kids take public communication the first semester that they're at
Absolutely.
school so that they know how to speak in front of a microphone.
Yes.
And it's unfortunate that some of these guys, talking about communication, I think it's very unfortunate that because someone is articulate, they are deemed being, they're looked at as being intelligent. And that folks that aren't articulate are looked at as being stupid.
Correct.
And we've actually had presidents. I can hearken back to George W. Bush. Regardless of your politics, he had a problem with tripping over his own words. Now, I will say, regardless of your politics, I think most people would agree, he was a very sincere, he was a very heartfelt individual.
Yep.
Whether you agree with what he was doing or not, he felt as though he was doing the right thing.
Yep.
He was not stupid. You don't get to be president of the United States and be ignorant.
Or the governor of Texas.
Right.
Twice.
Right. Well, no, there's Rick Perry. And he's both.
Yeah.
I mean, we're not going to go into the wormhole of Rick Perry, but I could go on for hours.
We can talk about Steve Bashir, too.
If
you want.
But I really absolutely felt sorry for him when his faux pas showed up on the evening TV show circuit. And then you got Bill Clinton, who, very intelligent guy. But he got as far as he got because he could speak very well. He could speak to the upper educated and also the lower educated and get both of them on his side because he was a fantastic speaker.
I have no idea how his lower lip survived all that, though.
No.
Because he chewed it off
Well,
to both audiences.
Well, and also, when you speak out of both sides, sometimes you think it get a little tough.
confusing.
I'm just saying. But I think you can see many, many different examples of communication. And every relationship, though, I think it's suffice it to say, every relationship will deteriorate if communication breaks down.
Yep.
And I really don't care how long the relationship is. If you stop talking to each other, things go away. The good things go away.
Yep.
And the bad things pop up.
Quickly.
And I think now we can talk a bit about how we communicate as a society now. And honestly, in my 51 years of life, I find as though it's the worst that it's ever been.
Radio edit.
And so the onset of email in the workplace is fantastic. It's one of the best workplace innovations that we've ever had because it provides documentation to communication.
Well, yeah, it provides documentation for the business process. But I want to roll that back because forum communication has been around since probably at least 86. So bulletin board, electronic communication, let's just use that, and not just email because it's a big thing. I'm also an IT guy, and I tend to live at a keyboard, so yeah.
He does.
I do. This is the first time I've been out of the house since last time I was over here. So.
Since the last time he was out of the house.
That right there is some prime communicating.
So you were telling him, and now he's just drinking. He brought up a topic, and then he lays back and just starts drinking.
No, I just said
I don't need your high voice.
James mentioned email in the office as being an impact on communication, and I just rolled that back a couple of decades because electronic communication's been around a long time.
Well, and I think it's so positive in so many ways, but I also think that it can be extremely negative in that you don't get your ass up off your desk to actually establish communication lines and to gauge how somebody's day's going. Just to walk in and it is a lost art in an office setting to actually go by someone's office and say good morning.
Yeah.
It really is.
He chastises me when I walk into his office, and I'm like, what the fuck?
I'll tell him to walk his ass back out. And I'll do that with anybody.
Right. I've seen him do it with anybody.
We had one of our vice presidents come by the other day and ask me a question. I'm like, I'm sorry. Good morning. And he actually broke it back and says, good morning, sir. How are you? And it's amazing what happens if you give just some basic greeting to somebody. And I've had people also in offices walk by you in the hall and not even say hi.
Mm-hmm. And I'm guilty of that. I get my head wrapped around something, And
I think that's fine if it's the exception and not the rule.
more than not, it's an exception for me.
Yeah, right. And I would agree with that. So now we've got email that people use all the time. Obviously, texting has been around quite some time as well, but I think it's probably more first and foremost now than it's ever been. To the fact to where I have actually been texting back and forth with somebody. I will call them, and it will go to voicemail. And I'm thinking to myself, you got the damn phone in your hand. You just sent me a text.
See, James is not a nerd.
No, I'm not.
I'm
a cocksmith.
Oh yeah, I'm going to let that one go.
As you should.
I had the great blessing of marrying another nerd.
She didn't have that blessing.
My wife and my study is upstairs, right? I've conquered the bonus room.
I love
in the
how he
house.
says conquered like there was a battle on the stairs.
Oh, you didn't see it when we moved in. But yeah, so my office is upstairs. She hangs out downstairs. That's where her crafting stuff is. And that's where we live, pretty much. I mean, and it helps. We've been married a good long time, 28 years.
Well, you're comfortable.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
found the balance.
But I can take a couple of days off work. Let's just call it a weekend. Any weekend. I come downstairs to eat. We share breakfast, lunch, dinner. The rest of the time, I'm upstairs. How do we communicate, James?
Texting.
No.
Instant messaging.
Instant messaging. Facebook. We find somebody else's thread and talk about the plans for the week.
Just a random person thread.
Yeah, you just pick one out of the blue.
Did you get my underwear out of the dryer, honey? Like.
Exactly. Oh, fuck the like. It's a heart right there, baby.
Bring up a GIF.
We've had GIF wars.
But you know, I think,
And I cannot believe I just fell for that. It's not GIF, it's GIF.
going back to communication, phone ought to be spelled FONE.
I guess fish should be spelled PIF.
No,
whatever it is.
FISH. It's spelled right.
No, it ain't. The English.
Pneumonia. Why the fuck is there a P in front of pneumonia? Because guess what? Putting that P out in front of there does the exact same thing as if it didn't have the damn P there at all.
Yeah, I can't. Yeah, I got nothing on that one.
It's the human language. Not the human language. It's the English language.
I'm going to cut him off. See, this.
Sadly, this has nothing to do with bourbon.
I got to fix your mic, man. Keeps moving on me.
You're like a Pentecostal. That's a draw right there.
That's staying in there. It's probably more accurate than you'd like to know. The English language is probably the hardest language
Try that.
on the planet.
I'm asking Root to try the Knob Creek rye with an ice cube in it.
Which is completely against any known religion.
Let me know what you think, because I'll just convert you. Just wait. I know what I talk.
That's pretty fun.
That's like butter.
Yeah, it is.
That is like butter.
Still got the bite.
Yes.
But it sneaks up on you.
And it just kind of, it's just easy.
Yeah. Yeah, that's danger. That's danger. I mean, the drum neat is dangerous.
Yeah.
The drum on the rocks, that's on a street corner curled up around a stop sign. That's what that is.
He talks of danger about things that stand on street corners. We don't want to know about your browser history. I just know he's been on Home Street a few more times than he ought to be.
I've been on Short Street more times than I ought to be.
Well, guarantee it's not as scary as Home Street.
You ain't never been on, well,
I have.
let's talk about Third and DeWeese back in about 1984. This seems to be no, back when you couldn't find the Apollo Theater down there because it was overgrown.
Yeah, I was a Frankie boy.
See, I was elections boy. Oh, we got tails.
That's real close to good, but only about